Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to our Thursday afternoon at 2 p.m. Facebook Live presentation. The right side of Eric's face isn't glaring today because the sun's not out.
I take one for the team, Jeffrey.
Yeah.
Make sure you look good.
Okay, today we're going to talk about a couple things that we didn't have time for last week that we think are important. And then we're going to talk about the elderly having financial difficulties and special considerations there might be for people that are older. And Eric and I chuckled when we went over that yesterday and this morning because here we are.
Our target market.
Right. Anyway, evictions. As you're aware, the governor, by executive order, has imposed a moratorium on evictions in New Jersey, and he keeps kind of pushing the date back and back and back. But we're, things are clearing up now, and I think the time's going to be not too far in the future before he lets that happen. Right now, the date is the 19th of May is when the eviction moratorium expires, unless he re-ups it, which I kind of would expect him to, at least one more time.
And really, that has to be done 60 days. In other words, Jeff, he's going to talk to us, his populace. He's going to speak to us by March 17th or 18th.
Yeah, it should be this week that we get another executive order that tells us what's going on.
Because how it works, as we've explained before, it's 60 days after the emergency. Yeah. So he's still declaring it an emergency through a state of emergency through March 17th or 18th, whatever. And if he declares the emergency to continue, then it will be 60 days thereafter when evictions might begin.
Yeah.
But it's possible.
I think you might say that in his executive order, 60 days after the emergency is over.
So he may declare the emergency over. You don't think so? If it goes,
I don't think this month. Maybe next month. We'll see.
And then that would, of course, be June 20th or so when evictions can begin. So it's
correct.
So it's good that we're speaking to the people who are watching about evictions because it's real, whether you're a landlord or a tenant.
Right.
The courts are going to start opening up.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Well, it's the governor's executive order that stops the evictions. As a practical matter, landlords can't get to that point because the Supreme Court stopped all landlord-tenant trials except for those involving commercial properties or some type of health emergency, or we'll say an emergency, but I think generally that's going to be like a health emergency kind of thing. And we want to talk a little bit about if you need to do a bankruptcy ultimately for your rent arrears, how that works. And we've gone over that before, but we just want to do it again and know that there is that thing we call bankruptcy out there for you, and it's not the end of the world at all, and it would do exactly what you need to do with your rent arrears. It would allow you to pay them over a period of years and resume making the normal monthly payment the month after we file the bankruptcy. And I guess, that's how things would work. If we did a Chapter 13, you'd be paying for the mortgage arrears through the Chapter 13 trustee. If you decided you wanted to leave your current residence, then Chapter 7 is a possibility, but we would see what else you've got going on. There might be something else you need to pay for through the Chapter 13 trustee. So we may end up doing a Chapter 13, even though as far as your residence is concerned, we would say we're just going to reject the lease.
And that means that lease, of course, Jeff, that means that lease payment doesn't stay with you. It rejects it and you get a fresh start.
Right.
And really, Jeff and I speak 20 minutes every Thursday, but if you want a little bit more thorough review of the differences between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, please call for Jeff's book. We'll give it to you. It's no cost, no obligation. The phone number's on your screen now. Give us a call and say you want Jeff's book, Make Bankruptcy Work for You. And it really, really is a good summary of the differences between Chapter 7 and Chapter 13. what we can offer today is not a bad summary, but the 7 and 13 do work to stop the evictions right away. That's for sure. So that's important to talk about.
Yes, it is.
No matter what kind of bankruptcy you do, the eviction stopped.
Right.
And that's clients come in crying and walk out smiling is an exaggeration. But give us a call. You're behind with your rent, and we'll talk to you about how you get long-term relief and stay there. Chapter 13. Short-term relief, leave, and you won't owe them any more money.
Exactly.
Chapter 7.
And I'm sure for some of you, the money adds up. I mean, it could be that you're behind is a year or so, and that's, we're talking a fair amount of money. That was my wife bringing one of her dogs in to visit while we're doing our program. I mean, how can we concentrate?
You know what? We have thousands and thousands of people watching this right now, Jeff, and it's
Sure.
we don't want that disruption.
Yeah.
So rent arrears, we believe that landlord-tenant court is going to start pretty soon. If you're behind with your rent, there's been no consequences right now, right?
Correct.
You're behind with your rent, you're not getting thrown out, and
Right.
typically that's the moment. That's one of the reasons why you pay the rent. Even if you can't, you borrow, you do what you haven't had to do that. So it's going to come up to a point now where you're going to do something to save your property, or move out and not owe your landlord any more money. And we offer that. Give us a call, and we'll make sure you can stay in the property long term, get out of the property short term. You won't be evicted right away. Right? You're still protected, but you don't have to pay the rent. And it's important. Jeff talked about this in the beginning today. We talked about it a lot last week. There's so much legislation, laws, new laws to help because of COVID, because of the shutdown. But bankruptcy is a law that's been in place. It dates back to the Bible, and you can trace much of the language to the Bible. And that's actually in your book.
No, I know.
Right?
I know.
And it's a law that civilizations have used these type laws to help people. And there's no reason, if you're behind with your rent, for you to go to sleep tonight stressed. Don't be stressed. We can talk to you about a way for you to get out of it that's legal. And just because the largest corporations in America use lawyers to help them out of situations, that doesn't prohibit you from using lawyers to help you. And that's what we're here. That's really our mission, to help you.
That's exactly right. The other thing we wanted to mention before we move on with the elderly considerations, utility shutoffs. In most states, certainly in New Jersey, also in Pennsylvania, there's been a moratorium on utility shutoffs. Whoever did it, whether it be the governor or the utility companies themselves, voluntarily did it. In New Jersey, the deadline for the moratorium, in other words, when it's presently set to expire, is the 30th of June, 2021. And in New Jersey, there are a lot of people behind with their utilities. Certainly there are in Pennsylvania, although we're not speaking to Pennsylvania so much. I saw that there was like a third of the people in Pennsylvania were behind with their utilities.
Wow.
And the utility company estimated it would have to increase the rates by almost 20% to make up for what the revenue that they've missed over the past year. But if bankruptcy, again, I mean, we're not, it's not like bankruptcy is a cure-all and appropriate in all situations. We're very mindful of that. And we would never suggest to someone that they do a bankruptcy if we didn't feel it was appropriate. But the bankruptcy would take care of utility shut-off issues too. And we've talked about this before. Basically, what's going to happen is if you file a bankruptcy with us, either Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, we'll notify the utility company, and they will not shut your service off. In fact, they can't. It would be a violation of the bankruptcy code for them to do that. And what they do normally is they will terminate your old account number and give you a new account number. So you file a bankruptcy, the only thing you're responsible for is the service going forward. What utility service you use after the bankruptcy is filed, Certain utility companies may also ask for a security deposit. It's generally not bad. You can always ask them to have it paid over time, like over 3 or 4 months. They send it, the fact that you owe a security deposit, they'll send that with your normal bill if they're going to ask for one.
And it's just like having a new account. If you move, so filing bankruptcy is there. And because the utility companies have been prohibited from shutting off utilities, and because our economy has been so rotten, people owe a lot of money on their electric, gas, water bills, and they have to be zeroed out. That's what we're going to do. Give you a fresh start. We can't give you a fresh start if you have a $1,200 electric bill or a $5,000 electric bill or whatever. Yeah, really, $1,200 only in the winter isn't much for many people for a couple months. So you get a several $1,000 electric bill. When they wrote or heat bill, when they wrote the bankruptcy code, they were mindful of the fact that the purpose here is to get you a fresh start. So we're going to get you out of the rent or a plan to catch up. What good's that if you still have a $5,000 electric and gas bill? We're going to get rid of that, zero it out, and you start over. Even if you stay in the same property, you just start over. It's wonderful, the thoughtfulness behind the bankruptcy code here.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, when we talk about the elderly, and we could be looking, like I indicated before, in a mirror right now, we could be talking to ourselves. There are a couple of considerations that you don't have with younger folks, and this is important for the audience to listen to, because it may be that your parents or your grandparents are having a tough time financially, and some of the things we're going to say will be beneficial to them. So the two things that just jump out at you as being rather unusual is, number one, we have pensions in play, or 401ks or whatever, and a lot of elderly people are concerned about their pension, rightly so, and they're afraid that if they file a bankruptcy, something's going to happen to their pension. And the answer to that question is it won't. New Jersey passed a law in 1993 that said creditors, whatever type of retirement account you had, it was immune from creditors. And I read that law when it passed, and I looked at the Internal Revenue Code sections that they had. They had every single one that you can think of for retirement plans, even if they were self-directed, like an IRA, as opposed to something that's not self-directed, like a 401k that you have through your employer. So in New Jersey,
I'm just picturing you looking at the parchment, Jeff, from 1993. But go ahead.
For pensions, they're all immune from creditors. And the highest federal court in this area, it's the Third Circuit Court of Appeals, had an opportunity years ago to examine the interplay between this New Jersey law from 1993 and overlaid with a bankruptcy filing. And they concluded that if somebody in New Jersey files a bankruptcy, that law applies. All your pension accounts or retirement accounts are just not part of the deal, whatever you've got in there. I mean, we would talk to you about things. If you just took $100,000 out of your IRA and you come to see us the next day, there's some issues. But
similarly, if you just win the lottery and throw it all in an IRA and say, I have no money, it's all in a pension, there are issues, but those are rather oddball situations.
Yeah, but absent extreme things, it's not a problem. And then the other issue that we would face generally with elderly folks, Eric, would be...
We talked about the two issues. I think it's reverse mortgages and mortgages that we wanted to talk about.
Right.
And that's important. Look, there is no right age to file bankruptcy, okay? But importantly, there's no wrong age. We've had 23-year-old couple who buys a house, the wife becomes pregnant with twins. So daycare is more expensive than anticipated. One of the spouses can't go back to work.
Right.
On one income, they can't pay their credit cards. They just can't. Even though they're 23, they should file bankruptcy. But similarly, we have people in their 70s and 80s, I don't know if we've reached 90, but perhaps, that have taken out reverse mortgages and we'll talk about what that is, and they can't pay their real estate taxes, or they haven't told a relative that they can't pay real estate taxes. And with some help from relatives, they can pay going forward, but they face a tax sale. Let me talk. I threw a lot of issues out that. The first issue I just want to mention briefly. New Jersey's real estate taxes are extraordinarily high. And
The highest. in
they're the
country.
highest. And even though Jeff has spoken about this moratorium against evictions, there's a moratorium against sheriff sales, but there's an exception. If you receive a lawsuit because you haven't paid your real estate taxes, you can lose your home, and it's almost non-judicial. It just gets administratively signed and you lose your home. So let's define a reverse mortgage.
And it happens so fast. So if you're mixed up in anything like that, if you get a complaint or something about a hearing in court and you're behind with your real estate taxes, you got to see an attorney real fast. That's important because it goes so quick. It takes about 2 months for a tax certificate holder to foreclose on their tax certificate, and it happens. It's frightening how fast it is.
So we do see a lot of elderly people with a reverse mortgage. Jeff, you want to talk about the reverse mortgage? You can, and
Yeah.
maybe then we'll swing back to what happens with real estate taxes.
Sure. Eric and I, we actually talk about things before we have our show, to go over what we're going to say. And we don't want to try to give you an education about reverse mortgages. It's just something that you see sometimes with elderly clients, or we see it sometimes when you've got an elderly person in the family who died and they had a reverse mortgage on their property and maybe left it to you in their will, or you would be a natural beneficiary under our intestate laws about who would succeed to get the property from the estate. But anyway, a reverse mortgage, you have to be 62 years old, first of all. And what they do is they look at how old you are, how much your house is worth, do you have a mortgage on it, and they're going to loan you money, and you won't have to, you can use that money for different things. You can have them give you a little bit each month. You could have a line of credit set up, but they're also going to use that money like for the monthly mortgage payments. If they loaned you $200,000, you're going to have payments at interest on that, but they're not going to ask you for it. They're going to just do it because they know there's enough equity in your home to pay for all that. And
so the balance increases every month.
And
Unless it's a reverse mortgage, a regular mortgage, the balance, you're making payments and the balance goes down. This
exactly.
escalates.
And the things that you have to pay for in a reverse mortgage, you don't have to worry about your mortgage payments, but you do have to pay your property taxes. You do have to pay your property insurance. And if you don't do that, that's an event of default, and they can start a foreclosure. So I don't know if we need to talk more about reverse mortgages. They're not, they have advantages and disadvantages. The fees are significant, frankly. I mean, that's a disadvantage. The interest rate is always adjustable. I'm pretty sure. I mean, that's what I've read. And you've got fees to pay the mortgage company. You're paying them principal and interest on what you've borrowed so far. There's other little nicky-nacky expenses as well, and they kind of add up. So
anecdotally, this is what we see. This is what we're trying to tell you. If you have a reverse mortgage, or if your parents, grandparents, elderly neighbor has a reverse mortgage, a friendly talk to them just to remind them, are you paying your real estate taxes? Is everything okay? Is an important talk to have, because there is no moratorium against foreclosures if you're losing your house due to real estate taxes. And that is particular for seniors, or as Jeff explained, if you inherit a house. Now, technically, when the house is sold, pardon me, when the person who has a reverse mortgage dies,
Mhm.
you technically have 6 months to pay off that debt. You can pay it off a number of ways. You can sell the house.
Mhm.
Number two, you could pay the balance by refinancing, or pay 95% of the appraised value of the house, whichever's lower, the balance or the 95% appraisal. So you might want to consider buying the house from someone who paying off the mortgage and buying the house if you've inherited it. But there's no personal liability if you've inherited the house. So if the balance on the reverse mortgage is 200,000 and the house is worth 150, just give it back to the mortgage company and let them foreclose. But for the elderly person with a reverse mortgage, keep up your homeowner's insurance, pay your quarterly real estate taxes, and if you're behind with the real estate taxes and it's an event of default of foreclosure, you need to speak to an attorney right away. Because I'll tell you what, the bank or mortgage company is going to speak to an attorney, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to have an attorney doing everything right away. And normally, I mean, we do have elderly clients that come in, but usually it's a younger person who is the grandson or the son or something like that and may want to stay in the house. And usually when they come to see us, something bad's already happened. Like, somebody didn't pay property tax payments and or the property insurance. And so now the mortgage company is foreclosing on their mortgage. And the question is, can this person who may not be illegal, may not have their name on the deed, can they file a bankruptcy and stop the things that are going on? And most of the time the answer is yes, because if you are named in the will as somebody to inherit part of this house, or if there is no will and you look at New Jersey's intestate laws and you stand to inherit according to them, you actually have a legal interest in the property. And so you could file a bankruptcy and stop the mortgage company from doing their foreclosure. And then, if you came to see us, we would explain to you what your options were if you wanted to keep the property, like Eric mentioned before, the different things you can do. But usually that's the situation we see. I mean, the ideal situation is for our client to go out there and get a deed in their name before we file the bankruptcy, but it's not necessary. It's not absolutely necessary. As long as that legal interest is there by virtue of the will or our intestate laws, then we can stop the foreclosure with a bankruptcy filing.
Just had a call yesterday, Jeff, from somebody whose car was repossessed. We can get that car back by a bankruptcy filing. We talked earlier today about landlord-tenant. We can stop that by a bankruptcy filing. We can stop a standard foreclosure by a bankruptcy filing. Mm-hmm. We can stop a tax sale or a reverse mortgage foreclosure. We can stop a wage garnishment. Mm-hmm. Even if it's the IRS that's garnishing your wages, we can stop it. Yeah. So there's so many tools in our toolbox to help consumers. And if you just want a little bit of an overview before you really get involved in talking to us, just call and ask for our book, Jeff's book. I call it our book, says Jacobs and Clayton. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Somewhere it says Jacobs and Clayton. Not on the cover, on the back. Give us a call, get the book, learn a little bit. Information is the key. And we can really help you. Let our family help your family is our motto. And it's really, we've been doing this for more than 30 years, helping consumers in New Jersey save their assets and stop collection actions. Absolutely.
Well, I think we did pretty well today.
We covered a lot.
We got a good amount of time, and we covered what we needed to cover. So we'll call it the end for today. And please tune in next week on Thursday at 2:00, same time, same place, same smiling faces, to talk about another important topic that you would be interested in. So until then, stay safe and God bless.